so much. Hi, DeVon. How are you
Hey,
doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. We haven't spoken since Live Free,
Oh
so
my goodness. Right. I remember that.
good to interview you again. But tell me a little bit about It Takes a Woman. Like, how did this project come about?
Audible reached out to me and they had seen an article that I had written for Maria Shriver in her Sunday paper about the women that raised me after my father passed away. And, they were like, we really think we want to make a Audible original on this, which is an audio book that can only be found on Audible. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And, I went to my mom and my great aunts that were still alive because my grandmother passed away years ago and said, we have this opportunity to tell our story. Would you be willing to participate? And they said yes. So the genesis was just that simple and just really started to figure out how to tell our story and how to weave it all together. And that process has taken years. And what the listener is hearing is really the first time a lot of the things that we share have ever been discussed in our family before. So you're really getting an intimate portrayal of the pain and the tragedy that could have disrupted our lives, but ultimately was the catalyst for healing and triumph.
And I'm glad you brought that up. That was one of my questions was, were there combos? Because you guys are going to hit on a lot of things, love, relationships, family. Were there those first time combos? And I mean, were you uncomfortable talking about many of these things in this setting? Because if it is therapeutic and healing, but you're sharing it with the world.
Yeah, I know, right? I would say, yeah. I mean, there were moments of discomfort. Moments of like, okay, how far is too far, and how much can I share or can we share and be okay with? And we had to find that line. We had to really wrestle with that because you're right in being transparent and doing something like this where you're really inevitably sharing your wounds with the world. That wound, those sharing of those wounds is vulnerable. In that vulnerability, there's an emotional nakedness that is sometimes hard to deal with. So we all collectively navigated that, and I think the ultimate product and what the listener hears when they listen to It Takes a Woman is really the culmination of that vulnerability in a way that I think will impact the listener in a positive way.
Do you think because of this sharing process, do you hope that the listeners, that this will kind of mirror to them to have the opportunity to go back and have these same conversations with their families for growth and healing?
Absolutely. Because think about this. This dawned on me while I was doing this book. Here I am, I'm 44 years of old, 44 years of age. I've been in this family my whole life. I've been to countless family dinners, countless family gatherings. And what do they usually amount to? Food, watching games, joking, and that's it. And here it's almost like the equivalent of living underneath land that has oil, but you never drill for it. Can you imagine if you owned a house in the backyard, all you did was play on top of it, having no idea what was underneath it?
Right.
And we end up having all these experiences with our family members, especially those older family members, and they are our oil, and we never drill for it.
Mm.
They have so much to give us, and we never ask them. We never sit down with them and tell us your story. What were you like at this age? What did you do? What did you learn? So yes, that's a long answer to your question. Yes, my hope is that this will be an inspiration to people to start asking their family questions, start asking their elders for information and talk to me so that these stories don't get lost. That's why I wanted to do this. Our oral tradition is what has been one of the main keys to our survival as a people, keeping the stories alive from generation to generation to generation. And I don't have to tell you, when you look at what's going on in the world, there is an agenda to rewrite, disrupt, and in some cases destroy the real history of what we've had to endure. The one way that no one can ever take is our story when we tell it. And so I wanted to tell our story as a microcosm, to tell our story so that it doesn't get lost and that it gets memorialized, not only for this generation, but hopefully for generations to come.
think there's another positive narrative that I saw as well, just surrounding Black women as well. I wrote something recently on social media that oftentimes we're seen but not heard. And oftentimes we're the catalyst to many great things, but we're never going to get the credit for it, right? And so
Right.
I see what you're doing with your moms and your great aunts, and it's shifting this narrative or just putting it in the spotlight for here's the Black women in my life, who made me who I am today. Like how does what you've created through this help to shift that narrative or to fit in with what we're looking for when we're saying, protect Black women or listen to Black women, especially, in today's times?
Yeah, I mean, let's just look at even the imagery for the book. The cover art with me and the 6 women in my family on the cover. My mom and my aunts. The youngest aunt is Aunt Sondra. She's 76, and the oldest aunt on the cover is Aunt Nuna, and she's 96. And so it just starts right there with the imagery. Of here I am, a young Black man, and I'm surrounded by these powerful, amazing Black women. So right there, it's like, no, I'm not going to do a cover where it's just me. It's got to be us. So to your point, that the image doesn't get lost, over time. The picture doesn't fade. No, we're going to make it as vivid as possible. And so the moment you see it, you say, wow, that's cool. Wow. When was the last time that there's ever been a project in our culture that was multi-generational in that way?
Right.
I can't remember the last time I've seen, a project where on the cover it ranges from 96 to my mother is going to be 70 next year, to 70, with the Black man saying, hey, here, let's celebrate our women. Yeah. So it's important for these voices and these images not to get lost. That's why their voices are all throughout the whole book. When you listen to the book, you hear their pain, you hear their wisdom, you hear their joy, you hear their heartbreak, you hear their disappointment, you hear their triumphs, and that's why I'm so excited and passionate about this book, because I do think that it really, I think it's a bridge in our culture and our community, between the old and the new, between what became before and where we need to go. And so often we're trying to get somewhere, but we never analyze where we came from. And
Right.
sometimes that roadmap of where to go is back there.
Exactly.
And my hope is that through people listening to this book, that they will discover a roadmap for themselves that they may not have known existed in the way that it does.
I'll tell you one thing, DeVon. I saw the cover and I was like, this could be a movie. I mean, like with your background, I'm like, are you thinking about segueing this into a film?
I don't have any plans yet, but listen, if the book, if it has that type of success and a movie or some sort of other content is warranted, I'll explore it.
Well, I only have a couple more questions. I know your time is limited. Talk to me about conversations with maybe your mom or your great aunts after this creative process. Was there anything that they shared with you that maybe surprised them, or they was like, oh, I wasn't really trying to tell that story, and that kind of came out? Like, what's their feedback?
So much of what's in the book are things that they didn't know they were going to talk about. And so after doing the initial interviews with them, they all enjoyed it and found it very therapeutic to talk about things they had never spoken about before. And then, after a few days, they felt the nakedness of it. Like, oh, wait a minute, I exposed myself. Is that okay? And did I say too much? And da-da-da. I said, don't worry, I got you. I said, I got you. I'm not going to put you out there in a way that you feel uncomfortable. So we talked through certain things, where there were certain things they were like, well, I don't want to say it that way. Or can we do this? I said, yeah, no problem. And then there were other parts of it where I was like, no, we need to leave it this way. And here's why. And here's why I want you to be comfortable with it. Because truth and transparency transform. So we can sand down the edges of that, but every edge you sand down in that regard is going to sand down the edges of the impact too. So it really was, after the fact, dialogue and getting them, to a place where they felt strong standing in their vulnerability. And now, as the book is out and people are listening to it and their Facebook is blowing up, their text messages are blowing up, they feel so proud and honored that they could tell their story in this transparent way, and people are being blessed by it. That is like, it's amazing. It's one thing for me to do a book. I've done, a number of books over the years. It's another thing for me to do a book with them, and then they get the impact from the world, from other people. we tell them every day how much of an impact they make, but it's great for people to tell them now the impact they're making. So yes, it's been phenomenal to share it with them, and it's been a process.
What are the different personalities? I'm sure you got that many women. That's a lot of different personalities.
Got that right.
In one space. So talk to me just briefly about what are the different personalities we're working with here.
Yeah, well, my mom is more quiet and kind of reserved. So especially when you hear her on this book, I think, so much of her content in the book really just gets right to your heartstrings, because she doesn't really express a lot. And when she does, it tends to be very emotional. My Aunt Ida is really outspoken and, will put you in your place. Aunt Enis is very sassy. Aunt Donna is kind of like the wise and wild one. Aunt Nuna is, kind of the refined one, almost very movie star, glamorous. She's the oldest, 96. But she has such an elegance and a class about her. And Aunt Sondra is just like, she was the one that gave me my first job. So she is very much always has been almost like a mentor, where she's very helpful, like in terms of establishing a professional discipline and understanding. So, they all together, bringing them together. It's like you're listening to, the Avengers, right? You have all these superheroes who have come together to talk about their various powers and stories. And my hope is that the listener will take away a lot of power and a lot of wisdom that collectively they bring.
Well, I'm excited for you, DeVon. Is there anything else we can look forward to in the future, or just get through the audiobook?
Yeah, no, listen to the audiobook. And then I have a new series I executive produced for BET Plus coming out on May 19th called Kingdom Business. Yes. And that is gospel music drama, 8 1-hour episodes, and it's going to blow you away. 8 Yolanda Adams and Soraya star in it. And it's, if y'all thought Empire was something, wait till you see Kingdom.
Well, looking forward to it. Thank you so much for this interview today.
Of course.
And best of luck to you.
Always.
Thank you, guys.